What are some very creepy facts? Female mummies in ancient Egypt were always more decomposed than their male counterparts. They discovered that this was because male bodies were embalmed a lot sooner than female bodies. Female bodies were kept at the family home until they started to decompose in order to avoid necrophilia at the embalmers. After getting stung by a cone snail, you don't feel the sting for a little bit. There is no anti-venom and it can be lethal. Treatment is basically keeping the victim alive until the venom wears off. Cone snails are pretty freaky. Some of the most deadly ones can kill you in 30 minutes or less after they sting you. Their shells are super pretty too, so any beachcomber should be aware of these creatures and know how to pick up a shell carefully just in case someone might still be inside. One reason that crows and ravens are associated with death is because they would often follow armies as they marched to battle. Being both carrion birds and extremely intelligent, they realized that a large group of armed men marching on one direction meant that there would be a tasty meal of corpses to eat soon afterwards. Blot fish in its natural habitat looks like a normal fish, but it lives so deep underwater that it doesn't use a normal gas bladder to keep itself balanced. Instead, it has a spongy skin that is slightly less dense than water, which becomes damaged and bloated when fishermen bring it up too quickly. It's not really the ugliest fish. It has just experienced something worse than one of us being thrown into outer space. Between sea level and space, there's 1 atmospheric pressure of difference. Between sea level and 2,000 feet underwater, their upper limit, there's 60 atmospheres of difference. When you happen to be murdered, there is only an about 40% chance that your murderer will be found and punished. Edit: a lot of people are asking which country I'm referring to. This is a worldwide approximation. There are obviously countries with higher percentages of solved murder cases, but also some with even lower. For example, in the US there is a 40% chance to get away with murder, in Mexico 90% to get away with it. Organized crime, the overall amount of crimes in that area, and war plays a huge role in this. Locusts aren't a type of animal, they're a condition some grasshoppers experience. Many species of grasshoppers become locusts when they're too crowded, literally their legs rubbing together triggers the change. Once grasshoppers start to swarm, they will join up with others, physically grow larger, change color, and eat basically anything they find. Most of a swarm will be born as part of the swarm. Increased mating is part of swarm behavior. This is why it often seems like locust swarms come out of nowhere. Edit: whoa, this blew up. Thank you for the awards, kind strangers. Unfortunately, I'm not an expert and my Wikipedia level understanding was super lacking for a post with this many eyes on it. Here are some corrections that have been brought to my attention in the comments. A very small percent of grasshopper species swarm, and not all those that do undergo physical changes. Your garden variety grasshopper is probably harmless. Especially if you're in Na where there's only one species that swarms and it's super rare. Grasshoppers who do swarm are often called locusts even when not swarming. It's less of a grasshoppers catch locust situation and more of a there are a subset of grasshoppers called locusts who swarm. In the US, if someone is kidnapped and not found within about a day, then there is a 97% chance the kidnapped person is dead. And 3/4 of them are killed within the first 3 hours of their abduction. That's why it's so important to go the police right away, and for the cops to actually act immediately instead of waiting 24/48/72 hours. Edit: I'm not sure where that myth of wait X hours to notify the police came from, but I've heard so many missing persons cases where the police wouldn't act for a day or two unless there was serious evidence of foul play because they're an adult and it's not illegal for an adult to go missing. Or the teenager is with friends somewhere. Or they're a runaway. Children under the age of 12 always get priority, but older ones tend to come with excuses. Valuable time wasted leads to valuable lives wasted. Frown. Men who are hanged get a death erection, known as rigor erectus. Pretty awkward for the family, I assume. This is the one time I'd advocate using hung instead of hanged. There's a parasite that enters a fish's mouth, eats the tongue and replaces itself as the fish's new tongue. As a fish, there isn't a cure and it sucks. I keep saying stuff I don't mean to say. A black mamba is the fastest snake, which can slither at a speed of 12.5 miles an hour, 20 kilometers per hour. They have neurotoxins which are fast-acting. The venom shuts down the nervous system and paralyzes the victim. Its venom is able to kill 10 people and it repeatedly bites. To add on to this, there is an almost 100% kill rate and can kill in 20 minutes. The venom of a black mamba can kill a human in 4 hours if, say, bitten on the ankle or the thumb. However, a bite to the face or torso can bring death from paralysis within 20 minutes. Now, you should listen to this, 'cause this concerns you. The amount of venom that can be delivered from a single bite can be gargantuan. You know, I've always liked that word. Gargantuan. So rarely have an opportunity to use it in a sentence. If not treated quickly with anti-venom, 10 to 15 milligrams can be fatal to human beings. However, the black mamba can deliver as much as 100 to 400 milligrams of venom from a single bite. El Driver. When creating the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland, they couldn't create skeletons that looked realistic enough, so they used real human skeletons. They've since removed all of them except one. It was once discovered that a fir tree was growing inside a human body. Artyom Sidorkin went to the doctors suspecting something wrong with his lungs. The doctors thought they were dealing with a tumor, but turns out he had inhaled a fir tree seed which had sprouted and had begun growing in his lungs. Edit. Wow, so Grey's Anatomy is a popular show. I'm sure this was the inspiration for that episode. People don't take their anti-malarial drugs when they travel because they hear bad stories about the side effects and they see native people in the areas living okay without taking pills every day. The truth is, populations native to malaria endemic areas have all passed through pretty intense natural selection for survival and have a host of genes that prevent them from dying or suffering the other worst effects. Also, most of the resistance is built up over time. This is why it's most common for children to die rather than adults. Whatever people have heard about the side effects of the anti-malarials, getting it is so much worse. I, fortunately, have never had it, but I study it as part of my work and people have told me about having it and they all say the same thing: it is so awful you can't believe you're even still alive. It comes in cycles, usually 48 hours, and each cycle is agonizing and brings you the brink of death. Sometimes it takes you, sometimes it spares you for another few hours until it starts again. And there are forms that, even if you clear the infection with drugs, it still remains dormant in your system and can come back at any time. Edit. I don't want to freak people out too much. There are drug combinations that can kill every stage of the parasite as long as there is no drug resistance. Imagine being totally aware of someone performing CPR but you physically can't move or respond. Well, that's what happens when you get bitten by a blue-ringed octopus. You have approx 6 minutes between being bitten and someone starting CPR to keep your heart and lungs functioning to ensure you survive, all whilst being totally aware of what is happening to you. Neurotoxins are fun. Human brains when they dry out smell like cat piss, that stinky ammonia smell. Worked in an ER for 17 years in CT. Had a gunshot to the head come in and a chunk fell onto my shoe and didn't notice. While driving home was like, WTF, did my cat piss in the car or something? Went to take my shoes off and there it was. Edit. For all you people with morbid curiosity, fresh brains look like cream cheese mixed with strawberry jam. Edit 2, no, they died. Trans-life harvested organs. Half of your favorite 70s rock stars had 14-year-old girlfriends. Edit. Wow, I have been a Redditor for over 8 years, my previous highest comment was less than 200 upvotes, and I finally get to say it, RIP inbox. Edit 2, yes, I realize your favorite rock star might not have been /be a pedo/creep, but I was so disappointed to find out how many were. I hope society is moving past where this is seen as remotely okay, but then again people still work with Roman Polanski and he was actually convicted of drugging and raping a 13-year-old. Fuck him. 13 to 14-year-olds are children. Protect children, don't sexualize them. It's not that hard. Edit 3. Enjoying the artistic work of bad people is an interesting issue. I still listen to lots of the music in question, but I don't think I would if these were active artists and it was known. I wasn't alive in the 70s. And I certainly don't support them financially, well, any more than Spotify plays, so I guess I do to some degree. In Polanski's case, I have seen some of his older movies, but never paid for one. I wouldn't support him financially in any way and I wouldn't watch anything he makes at this point. I think it was Aziz Ansari who had an interesting bit asking the audience who still listens to R. Kelly, not a lot of hands, then later in the set asked who still listens to Michael Jackson, lots of hands and cheers. I think there is an issue of perceived guilt and also of artistic quality that plays into people's feelings. Regardless, I don't believe you should actively support known predators. The stonefish, an incredibly venomous fish living in tropical waters mostly off the coast of Australia and parts of US, can cause pain that only escalates with time. Eventually the pain will subside, but even after the barb is removed, patients have reported increasing pain 12+ hours later. Without anti-venom or denaturing the venom with excessive heat, the pain builds and builds until the patients request euthanasia. Its spines hold the venom, hidden in its dorsal fins. Aboriginals living around the Great Barrier Reef have corroborees, large gatherings, and will during these gatherings hold reenactments of people being stung by this monster, for what I assume is either amusement, learning, or both. Edit, corroboree clarification. Edit 2, pain does eventually end. Reminded of Suicide Tree where pain does not. Terrible leaves for toilet paper. Thank you for all the upvotes. So glad one of my parents' horror stories from Australia is so well received. I can attest to this. I was scuba diving in the Galapagos through a Discover Scuba thing because I'm not actually certified. I was with a guide who explained what all the hand signals meant before we went on the dive. But when we went down, I obviously forgot everything because I was having a great time and he made a weird hand signal, so I decided to stop swimming and put my hand on a piece of coral to stabilize myself. It was a stonefish and let me tell you, it hurts very bad. I'm honestly grateful I made it to the surface without passing out and spitting out the mouthpiece underwater. I did end up passing out on the boat back to the hospital and woke up with a nasty headache and still some pain in my hand. All I'm left with now is a scar and a cool story.